welcome everybody to Cavernoma Ireland's Brain Awareness Week webinar. I am Sandra Lynch, the coordinator and co-leader of Cavernoma Ireland, and my co-leader is Kay McGrath. Thank you to CAK for all their support in facilitating this evening's event. And we are delighted today to have Seamus as guest speaker. Seamus was the director of the former Ireland brain injury charity BRIE.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you. Thanks very much for inviting me, and very welcome. I know it's different times of the day there for different people, so we'll crack on. So as Sandra said, yes, by all means, feel free to ask a question throughout the talk, and I will be opening up with some sessions or some slides for a bit of exchange where people can actually just share their thoughts and share what's working, what's not working, or how maybe we can help each other with the peer support. So a little bit about myself. Yeah, like Sandra said, I was formerly with BRIE. BRIE was a charity based here in Ireland, and it was for people with brain injuries. I myself am a fellow survivor, so I would share some of the experiences I'm sure you guys are having as well. So today, what the voted topics for tonight's presentation would be cognitive effects after brain injury. And really what the cognitive effects are is really it's just how your brain processes and how you deal with information. So what we're going to look at is what the cognitive effects of brain injury can be, the impacts it can have on your life, and the strategies that we can actually work on together, or our own strategies that we are using to combat the challenges we're having in our cognitive effects. And then we'll have the Q&A session. If you can't hear me, just let me know. I'm from Northern Ireland, so we talk wild fast. So if I'm going too quick, stop me as well. Okay, so the presentation I'm going to be sending out, or that we're running through here, Sandra will have a copy of it, or I've shared a copy with her, and it's available if you wanted, rather than me sending out emails just for GDPR. I don't really think that would be possible, so it's mostly easier just to hand it over to Sandra. Okay, so really cognition, really what is cognition? So cognition is the effects on the brain injury is really to do with the way a person thinks, learns and remembers. So cognition really is for everyone. It's not just for a person who has a brain injury. Differing mental abilities are located in different parts of the brain. So whatever part of your brain has been impacted by your brain injury, obviously then some cognition areas will be different. So they're not all going to be the same. And the good news is, just because one part of the brain is damaged does not necessarily mean it's game over. Your brain can compensate. Skills such as speed of thought, memory, understanding, concentration, problem solving, and using languages can all be a little bit difficult. We'll go through this presentation, and it'll hopefully provoke some thought maybe in yourself, and you can relate to it. As I said, you can share some funny stories with each other, because sometimes having a brain injury can be quite funny. So with the cognition, we need to look at the results. The survivors processing information is different, and we will all have different processing speeds, and we'll all have different levels of processing the information as well. The important thing is that you take time to process and don't be too hard on yourself. All right, so the main types, there are loads of different types, but pretty much the day-to-day types or people difficulties would be in language. Sorry? Language, attention to detail or lack of attention, memory, perception, learning, higher reasoning. I should actually put in distraction there as well, because I get quite easily distracted. So these are just how the daily challenges we would be coming across as a brain injury survivor. So the typical one for languages, you might have heard some of your professional staff calling asphasia. So really the signs of that would be, you may be typically receptive and making difficulty or a little bit complicated to really find out what people have said or what they have written. And you might have difficulties in finding the right words, or you could be midway through a conversation and you might throw the odd wrong word in, and you might not necessarily notice it, but other people have. Maybe through time you will realize you have used the wrong word. Or you might say, I put the sugar in the fridge. No, it wasn't the sugar in the fridge. You put the butter in the fridge, but you're just obviously associating and just putting some sort of link in there. I had a sandwich with a cup of tea and there was sugar used in my tea. So as part of this experience of having that meal, you were using one of the components, but you just used the wrong word in place. So that could be having difficulties with the everyday items, such as mixing them up, or even people's names. Um, so then you can be sometimes maybe in a conversation with a person, and rather than using the word, you can say uh, the white stuff in the jug, meaning milk. So has anybody had experiences like this? Don't all rush at once.
I forgot the word for a pram, and I called it a baby like trolley, trying to describe
practical,
it to someone. Yeah, I was like,
and did people understand?
Yeah, they got it. I got a look or two when I first said that, but people understood what I meant anyway.
Yeah, but the other thing with this is as well, it's how people will actually visualize. As I said, like it's the Pictionary. You will have. It's probably like you're trying to describe some words to a person who doesn't necessarily speak the same language as you, and you're trying to find the common words, such as you said there, carriage for baby, pram. Obviously, it does. It does the job. Has anybody else any experiences or how they overcome, or what challenges have to come with this? No? Okay. All right. So it's just something. Thanks very much there, Charlotte, for sharing your experience there. I have lots of different experiences that you can come across. Like, for example, even just in the structure of a sentence, I was on a work call at one stage, and I meant to say, "I'm sorry, put on a person on hold. I'm sorry for putting you on hold. How can I help you?" That was what I meant to say. I actually said, "I'm sorry for holding you. How can I help you?" So it was a little. It might seem inappropriate. I actually caught it on, but it came out of my mouth. But sometimes if you just power on, people think they misheard it. So it wouldn't necessarily be too hard on myself. People will be overly hard on themselves, but don't be. That's one of the biggest tips I can say to a person with a brain injury. Everyone who knows you and respects you, knows what you've come through, will certainly make the exception for you. All right, so the attention to detail. And that's keeping focused. Sorry, there's chats going up here. I am not seeing the chats. So if anybody has Sandra, can you just do the chats?
Yeah,
I can't see
I'll
it.
let
I'm
you
just
know
getting a
if
flag.
it comes up, yeah.
Yeah, I can't see them. I'm just getting the notifications to chat there. Okay, so the keeping focus. So that would really be people would have difficulties on following a TV program or reading a book. I know for myself personally, if I'm following a TV program, box sets can be quite good, but quite heavy from the concentration span. But one of the things I would suggest there, if you're reading a book or you're following a TV program, get to that one particular point, finish that particular series before you maybe move on to a new one. I know some of when I was in my rehabilitation, there was a person who actually resented television because he couldn't remember what had actually happened during there might be a commercial break and he couldn't remember what happened in the few minutes before the commercial break. So he started to write down notes of what was actually happening, or he might have to record it and watch it twice without the commercial break, really, just to get the understanding of what actually happened. So if you are an avid reader, or if there's a television program you particularly like and you are having a little challenge with the remembering of what's happening before the commercial break, maybe record it, and maybe if you can speed it up through one of the like Sky or Virgin, whatever you're using, it might enable you to reduce the time in between the program itself. You're not getting distracted with adverts. Reading a book, just stick with the one book. Don't try not to pick up more than one book at the same time. That's the same with television program. Don't be watching 2 or 3 programs at the one time. Well, you can watch. I mean, like a series, or say, for example, you're watching one crime program and there's a comedy series. Try not to get the things linked in, particularly if there's same characters in it. That can be a little bit difficult. People sometimes have problems remembering is what they're actually doing. So when you're doing, sometimes you can just be in the middle of something, you take a blank. Has that happened to anyone? Yeah, okay. And how do you manage? What do you have? Do you retrace your steps? Do you look at what you've been doing? Do you try and move on to something different, or what do you do? Probably the best thing I would suggest would be just look at where you are doing what you're doing. If you're in the middle of processing, in the middle of actually doing something, the clues are probably there. You might need a minute. Just give yourself time. Don't try not to get agitated. If it's too difficult for you, just leave it and come back to it. It's fine. You might have a difficulty in something that somebody told you a few minutes ago. That often happens, mate, because you can actually find yourself drifting off in conversation, particularly if someone is giving very complicated or long-winded descriptions, or they're to really go on the long way around about a story. So maybe one of the things you could suggest there to a person would be recap what you've just heard with them, or it could be just really to challenge yourself in that conversation. Just ask them to repeat it, or just go back in your own words. Are you saying X, Y, or Z? Little links like that will actually train your brain just to think, and you will have to listen and strain. If there's too much information coming at you, tell people, I'm married to a talker. My God, talk and talk and talk. And it's like, stop talking. Would you just give me what I need to know? Summarized information. So finding your way around. So if you're going to a new place for the first time, it might be a good idea maybe to look up the buildings and what's there. I don't know if you're going to, obviously we're not going to tourist areas at the moment, but if you're going to a new building or a new location, there are lots of virtual maps. So maybe if you can look at where you want to go and maybe get a map, or particularly if you're maybe trying to map your way through rail links or bus links or whatever, it can be a little bit challenging as well. So really the option there would be to plan your route. Maybe write down your instructions of what you need to do in the times. It's really just to stop the pressure coming at you when you're in that experience. So work out how you like to do things, and do amazing, like using the remote control, prepare a meal. So whatever works for you, find out what works for you when you're actually doing it. If there's something you like to do and it's easy to do it. But at the same time, don't be afraid to challenge yourself. But again, following some sort of level of instruction, or some sort of platform that's going to give you information. It could be a YouTube clip, it could be a cookery book, or it could be a voice, like a TV program or something like that. Just really what it is, find out what it is that's working for you and keep doing it. So other tips as well would be use reminders on your phone, your smart home, like, hey Google, turn on the lights. Hey Google, remind me to do this. Does anybody have the technology in the house? My Google's just reminding me here, Stockholm. They are really, really, really good, particularly if you need to do something like, hey Google, remind me to turn the oven off in 30 minutes. They're actually quite practical things that they're in everyday life. It doesn't necessarily have to be on a phone or a smart device. You can set a little timer on your watch or whatever. To clear the brain out, it's if you've ever looked at the computer and there's a lot of information in it, you need to clear the cache every now and again. So really to clear the brain cache would be through meditation. So in that, it's just you're sitting there, clearing the brain out, letting everything go so you can refocus and move forward of what you need to do, and try and avoid distractions during your tasks. So no matter what you're doing, I find very frustrated when I'm trying to concentrate on a book or a television program, or somebody keeps talking to you and talking to you and talking to you, and then go, what did we miss? And go, I don't know, you were talking. Equally frustrating for the other person as well when they're trying to make a conversation, but it can be very difficult. Anybody else, any tips on how they can manage to keep the attention, keep them focused? Anybody, any challenges in particular they want to share? Anything coming through there? Like I'm on a silence. Is anybody there, Sandra, on chat?
There's one thing was mixing syllables in words at times, but still not sure if related to brain injury.
Is it a new issue?
Person doesn't say.
Okay, if it's very possible if it was pre-brain injury, maybe not. If it is, yes. The syllables, it's all to do with the neuralistic programming, and it's all to do with how your brain is processing. Maybe try and slow your thought process down. Maybe try and, I know the word's worse for fast talking. I really am terrible for it, and sometimes I stumble over words, or I get into little tangents. Still happens to me 10, 12 years on. But maybe if you just slow down what you're trying to do, or if there is a constant word that is throwing you, maybe think of a different way to construct your sentences. If you're having a particularly bad time of, everyone's just coming at a mush like that, then it might be a better idea to, rather than say what you're going to say, try and say it the same message and maybe a different way, because then you're slowing your thought process down.
Okay, it's just more coming in, same person. But let me see. It has been worse, but just a bit. I always had a small issue. I am multilingual, and that makes it worse.
Okay. So you're reverting back to your core of what you had there. Okay. So if you're multilingual, in some ways, that's really what the slowing down and restructuring sentences would be. What's probably happening there is you're probably reverting back over to your native tongue. And it might be able to, I don't know if the person's actually using the wrong, their previous language or their mother tongue instead. I'm not too sure if that's what's actually happening, or is it that they might be using the rules of that language in terms of the structure of sentences. I hope that helps. Any other questions? No. Sound of the questions come in, just please give feedback to me.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. So problems with memory. Everyone has problems with memory. It's not just exclusive to us, guys. We were not that special. Everyone has problems with memory, particularly the short-term memory, as we call it, the working memory. And these are quite common after brain injuries. So you could remember stuff that happened 10 years ago, but you can't remember what happened 5 minutes ago. Some people are unable to remember faces or names of what they've read or what has been said to them. New learning may be affected, while previous learning skills may still be intact. For example, multiplication, the stuff you've learned at school, 10 times tables, etc., 2 times tables. The brain is now unable to organize and manage new material. Does anybody have any issues of learning or remembering new stuff in particular? Or even relearning?
I was very interested in a talk we had from somebody else who I don't think is on the chat, your lovely webinar this evening, but it was that she failed. She was a mathematician and taught mathematics, and she found she had trouble teaching mathematics to her children, the simple things, and yet she was able to go back and teach the things that were advanced.
So she'd forgot the basics.
Yes, I think so. She said she couldn't do the sort of the 7 times table. Yet when it came to eigenfunctions or whatever mathematicians do, she had no problem. Okay, so
it's just probably, I think, in that instance, I don't know the person, their brain has probably just been used doing it and said, I don't need to learn this because I know how to do it. That's like breathing. There's certain things you don't need to be remembering how to do. But was it that they couldn't remember how to do the calculation, or they couldn't remember how to teach it?
Yes, I don't know. Well, she said she had trouble doing a 7 times table or something like that, and it came across to me as though she had trouble with it herself, not just the teaching. But I might be wrong.
Yeah. No, it's fine. But it just goes to show you as well, that people are. Brain injuries are very different for different people, and they can impact different people different ways. The acquired prior learning is there's certain things that people can manage very, very, very well for historical stuff. I'll touch on ways of learning and learning styles later through the presentation, but really it's just getting down to the organization. And for me, the stuff I can remember 20 years ago, 40 years ago, that was bet into me nearly at school, but there's all this stuff now I'm going to think, okay, I'm not so sure about that. Or if someone give me a list for the shop, I couldn't go, or if I had to go to a bar and order a round of drinks, how I visualize is I have to I think of the person and what they were drinking. That's my link. People just think I'm scabby. I don't want to try to buy a drink because I won't go to the bar. It's not that. It's because I have difficulty in bringing back the right things. Or sometimes I would maybe leave a person out inadvertently, and then they feel bad. But it just happens. It's just unfortunate. Okay, so it's important to know. Yeah, sorry.
Just one more thing in the chat. Somebody's saying, yes, I'm learning, trying to a new language to help and concentration. Memory is painfully difficult, might be age, but I wonder, didn't see of brain cavernoma and surgery.
Okay, well done on taking the step and learning a new language. I also started to do the same over the last year, and I've 200 and something days done in Duolingo, joining various different courses. Yes, it is difficult. Part of the problem for that could be, yes, there is learning, and there are different structures of sentence, etc. That could be part of it. And the other thing too is, one of the things I find, they keep talking about prepositions and different structures of sentence. I don't know what that means in terms of, when you're talking about the preposition. I know what the nouns and the verbs that are, but it's really just the structures of the sentence. So you've then got to go ahead and find out what that word means, so you can structure the sentence in a particular way. But well done, keep at the learning of the language. It is a brilliant way to exercise the brain. The brain is a muscle, so keep exercising. It's like any other muscle. If you want to build it up, you've got to exercise it. Anything else there, Sandra?
Oh, that's it for now.
Good stuff. What language are you learning, did they say?
No, didn't say.
All right, okay. Good luck with that anyway. The other thing too was with when you're learning that new language as well, just make sure it is appropriate stages. You're not in an advanced class, or you're too basic, or put a little bit of a challenge in, but keep it real. Don't put it into really too difficult for yourself, where you're really having to struggle. If you haven't got the basics, it's going to be extremely difficult to move forward. And don't necessarily worry about the spellings and the grammar. It will come to you. All right, so it's just me been learning a new language for a year. Go on. It's important that note the memory problems cannot be overcome simply by practicing or by going over the lists repeatedly, like your tables are chanting them into your head. Playing memory games or engaging in memory exercises the brain muscle. It's not going to do any harm. It actually could bring about some improvement. New or practical hands-on skills can be learned by repeating them frequently, but learning is not. But this learning will not transfer from one skill to another. So really, what we're saying there is that really don't be automatically thinking stuff will transfer. You will pick it up. You need to work at it to make sure it gets there. And it might take you time, but just keep working at it. Anything else, it's a muscle, keeps working. So tips for memory. Set out a structure or a routine with your daily activities, what you do on the day, what you have to do that day. And if you've got stuff that you want to do, break your list down into they would like to have, the what you must do. So put your must do's at the top of the list, and you go, when I get that done, then I can move on to the things that I want to get done, not what I have to get done. That comes down to your priorities. Everything lives somewhere. So what I mean by that is everything has its place. Your keys maybe in the drawer when you come into your house, or on the key hook. Your coat goes in the cupboard. If you start putting everything back in its own place where it lives, as we call it in our house, you will be able to, you're getting into a routine, and you're subconsciously you're beginning to remember this. If you have before my brain injury, we had a cupboard, and we used to call it someplace safe. And it was not that there was anything safe in it, but you said, oh, I must put that someplace safe. That became the dumping ground. But if we were ever looking for something was in someplace safe. It was somewhere in the cabinet. But if you don't know what to do with, just have an allocated space. If you've a letter and something that you need to go back to, say, I'll put that away. I know we'll go back into it, and routinely go down through that someplace safe and try and minimize the amount of stuff that's in there, rather than just leaving stuff on the sideboard and maybe walk it away and maybe someone else lift it up and forget about it, or destroying it. Use the memory aids, notepads, sticky notes, phone reminders, smartphone and devices, and the calendar in your phone as well. I used to find putting sticky notes in the door of the kitchen if I needed to do stuff in the morning, what I needed to do. Basically, that worked for me. You might have another option as well. You might have somebody who you rely on to get them to remind you to do stuff. If it works, it works, but don't become overly reliant on it. We need people to be able to sort of be self-sufficient here, because that person may not always be around when you're needing help. Mark, if you have a list, I'm a firm believer in the list and the task list, mark off what you have done. When you mark off stuff that you have done, there's a sense of achievement. You can see I have done X, Y, and Z. And from that X, Y, and Z, your day doesn't seem as daunting. If you've got a big list of things, you go, oh God, where am I going to get that done? But when you start to mark off stuff, go ahead. If you don't get everything done on your list that day, carry over 3 things, but no more than 3. If you're memory prompted, or if you're maybe in a multi-story car park, or if you're what entrance did you come into in the shopping center, or whatever, when you go in, take a photograph of the entrance that you come in, what shops were there, or if you're trying to navigate your way around the shopping center or seen something earlier on, you need to go back to that. You know, maybe take a photograph of the outside of the shop, maybe some of the artwork or fountains beside it. The car parking spaces one for me was an absolute gem for me. I learned that in my rehab as well. If you're going into multi-story car park, and there are thousands of car parking spaces, if you look at a car park, there's generally a pole with a little number on it, a grid number. Just take a photograph of the grid number. That way, you know your car is in H7 or S6 or whatever it is. And it sort of takes, you know, rather than around and looking for your car, walking maybe in the rain and getting a bit confused, particularly if you've got heavy shopping, it takes a lot of the stress out. And again, I keep going back to this. Take time out. Don't be too hard on yourself if you can't remember. If you look at a child, when a child is learning to walk, they need to develop their leg muscles, they need to develop their sequencing, they need to develop their balance. They will fall down, and they will continue to fall down until they've mastered it. So just be kinder to yourself. Sandra, anything there?
No, that's one person says, I have safe places, I can't remember where they are.
No, have one safe place. Have one. So if you have multiple safe places, that's when it gets messy. You just may leave it sitting out for all to see. No, it's just have one allocated space to do, and maybe even put that on your list of stuff that you need to do as a daily activity. Check someplace safe if there's something else there that I need to do. Okay, so perception. So this is actually managed by the right side of the brain of the parental and occipital lobes of the brain, which can cause sensory and perceptual problems. So brain disorders can disrupt our senses and also our perception of our senses, what they tell us. So you may have misunderstanding sound or processing the sound, or you can't articulate the way, like me at the minute. You can't visualize color, shape, sound. You can't say what they are. You have no idea, or you're getting them confused. Tactile, relating to pain. So, you mightn't be the most responsive to touch, to pressure, to temperature, your sense of smell, or your sense of taste. It's really just to do with your senses, to be fair. So it's really just the processing of those. In terms of the auditory one, I know personally for myself, if I am in a meeting room and there's a little tick, or there's a noise, or someone sniffing, or have a little language link like yes, 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 yes on the phone, drives me nuts. When I used to go into shopping centres, particularly in the early days after my brain injury, I could hear the buzz of the light bulbs. That's part of my ears had got so sensitive that used to drive me nuts. The overload of lights, if you go into like a lighting showroom, or if you go into a store like IKEA or any of the stores, it's not much natural light. It's more to do as a sensory overload, and that can become a challenge. So if you know that those sort of areas are not suiting you, don't go. And in fairness, if it's a large open space like a shopping mall center or something, now order online. Any questions there, Sandra?
No, that's all. Somebody says car park works brilliantly. So they like
Good.
that idea.
Good. And so some of the stuff, actually, I learned a thing a long time ago from my 7-year-old nephew. I asked him one day, where did he learn that? He goes, YouTube. I learned that in YouTube because, he said, why are you overcomplicating this? I was going, geez, a 7-year-old's teaching me how to think. And I'm going, actually, in fairness, that's right. Which actually will take me on to a good point now. Which is it? The next slide we're talking about? Yes, it will actually. It's a nice link. The learning slide. I know there's someone there learning a new language. Is anybody any issues learning, relearning? No? Okay. So learning. We all have to learn new stuff on a daily basis. We are processing, and that's really to do with your processing, new information, old information, linking old and new information, etc. If you are taking up new learning, it is important that you know your learning style. And there are 4. There's Google this. There's a test at the bottom here as well for your learning styles and strategies. There is the acronym VARK, V-A-R-K, visual, oral, reading, or kinesthetic. So this is how you identify your learning styles. You may have a blend of 2 or 3 different learning styles. For example, a visual learner. These are people who prefer to learn by observing things, reading diagrams, maps, or the YouTube clip. The oral is someone who likes to have stuff explained to them and how they can they'll be thinking things out and they'll be processing them in repetition. The reading would be following the instructions, or it could be following maybe a route plan or a map. And the kinesthetic is the physical learner. And this is what I'm most strongest on. And this is really where you're learning from your previous experience and you're learning by your mistakes. So it's the hands-on, touchy-feely learning. Somebody will maybe show you, particularly if you're looking at something on the computer, say, how do you do that? And they'll say, well, point at the screen, you go here, 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 here. That's the visual. But I would say, look, can you actually just let me do it and sit with me and let me make my mistakes to get to where we need to go? As long as I don't lose information or make a huge mistake, you will actually get there, and your intuition will help you through that. So if you do, there's a test there you could do there at the bottom of the presentation, and that will actually help you identify which skill you're actually using, which skills will be working the best for you. And on that VARK Learn website, there are lots of different tips on it as well. Any questions, Sandra?
No, not okay. The ones that just said relearning is so frustrating, feels like no capacity to take anything in anymore.
Okay, so that, yeah, okay. Unfortunately, it's something that the majority of people have to do. We do have to relearn, and it is frustrating. It can be frustrating. Maybe just put in, break the learning down into smaller sections. Remember the end goal. Find that learning style. What is it that actually helps you learn most effectively? Sometimes you see, you might hear kids at school say, oh, my child learned nothing in school. Probably it was the way years ago teachers taught. They didn't actually teach the way the child learned. And like you might hear people from years ago saying, oh, I didn't learn anything in school. I was different, or I was stupid at school. You weren't stupid. You learned in a different way. Okay, so the higher reasoning. So higher reasoning would be your judgment, your reasoning, problem solving, self-motivation, self-monitoring, complex cognitive skills that are affected after the brain injury. Problems in these areas also impact decision-making and behaviors. People that the brain injury have also difficulties in analyzing information and then the way they think. So sometimes they can be quite rigid, and I would still be quite rigid. But that's because it's extremely challenging sometimes situations, and you're thinking it's not that you're being deliberately awkward, it's just you don't want distraction. You are being very, very focused. You are what the end goal is, and you don't want anyone to derail you, it can actually come across at times as being bullish or non-respectful of other people. But it's really just your way of dealing with the situation. Don't derail me, don't derail me. So just do be mindful of it. If a person is going off and they're maybe putting in a different contribution of value, maybe put down a little note before you left off and take into what they were actually saying, because other people's ideas through communication and team working maybe will come up with a much better solution to a problem as well. Okay, so people might have a problem deciding what is the best solution for the problem. They may not be able to process prior learning. So what did I do in from that before? I can't remember what I did from experience, so I'll not do anything. It's not always possible. Sometimes you do need to make the decision, but the thing is, think about it, maybe speak to other people, try and get as good rounded version of advice as you possibly can before actually making the decision if you're unsure. People get stuck on the one solution and not considering the opinions of the others. So that's what I mentioned there previously, where people they just have it can seem that they have their own agenda. It's just they're so focused and so channeled on their way of going forward. Some people, you might say that they can be difficult to work with, or it's they're not a team player. They are a team player. It's just they play differently. Acting quickly without thinking about the possible consequences, so that can be the knee-jerk reaction, where people are maybe think, okay, I need to move, I need to make a decision here, and I'll just do something for the sake of doing something. I never actually thought of that. That actually goes back to the previous point there, deciding the best solution for the problem and not actually taking into consideration or reaching out to other people who are doing research as well. Acting quickly is good. Don't get me wrong. It is good if you're capable, but do not make a rash decision if you're not 100% sure. And particularly, it might be the right decision now, but just think of the possible consequences going into the future, and how it impacts you and how it impacts the other people as well. To link into that, you would also need to look at knowing what information is needed to get to that decision and how you evaluate the information to help you make that decision, whether it is reading a journal or doing some research online. Be careful of your online communications or your sources, YouTube clips, speaking to other people, documentaries, etc. We're trying to get a round value, a round perspective of the information that's there. Facebook's probably not the best place to go for your information because of the algorithms on social media. It knows your thought process and it will keep channeling the same information to you. There's nothing really there to make you challenge your own beliefs or your own thought processes. Has anyone by any chance, I'm not too sure, Sandra, most people here from Ireland?
No, some's England and one Australian.
Okay, there is a program on in Ireland here, and it's called Eating with the Enemy. You may have a similar program in your own country. It's actually quite good, and there's sociologists there talking about it. What they'll actually do is they'll bring two people in from absolutely polar opposites of viewpoint, and they'll put them at a table, and they'll actually find out that throughout the experience of the meal, they're more in common than they have apart. But the thing is, what they're saying is they couldn't have that conversation with someone they actually knew, because someone that they knew would probably align with their thought processes and their thought beliefs. Whereas you bring in somebody completely different, you get a completely different perspective. It's very well done. People are not arguing, they're not fighting. It's just they're having the opportunity to share ideas, and it's opening up their minds as well. So really, that's what I'm saying there about the knowing the information, and you need to evaluate the information. Don't always go to the trusted same people who are going to tell you what you want to hear. Maybe if you can ask other people, do you think they wouldn't necessarily agree with it, but they might have an input as well. Any questions, Sandra?
No questions. You've got about 15 minutes left, and you have to leave room for questions as well.
Yeah, I'm on my last one. Okay, so other problems with the higher reason, it would be judge what is safe for us, the safe and the unsafe behavior. That could be even going down to the perception of crossing the road, is it safe to have enough time to get through? Being unaware of cognitive problems. So even if the problems are clear to others, you may know the difficulty, but you may need to tell people in advance, particularly in a work situation or a group environment, that these things don't necessarily work for you, and explain to them, and they will actually understand. And also people may be a lack of their social boundaries, and taking into consideration other people's feelings. As kind of what we touched on earlier on, you're sticking to what you are actually focused on, and you're not necessarily flexible or giving other people the affordability of time. Sandra, that's me finished.
Okay. If anybody else has any more questions, you can unmute yourself or put them in the chat.
I just want to say thank you, Shams. That was very good. A number of things you said resonated with me, so it was good. Thank you.
Good. And do you think when it resonates with you, have you come across these issues that resonate with you and me? Other people have them as well.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Okay, so you're coming across some key issues that we've touched on, but have you found that other people have the same issues as you, or is it only people with brain injuries, or they're just something similar that I mentioned to you?
That's an interesting question. I'm not sure. I think it was unique to me.
Oh, okay. Well, then you're not unique. I have them as well, so you're fine. Any other questions?
I think a comment. They're not only specific to Cavernoma, are they? I mean, I wonder what portion of people with Cavernoma have the sort of problems you're talking about today. I don't have a feel for that.
Yeah, David has it. Go ahead, David.
Hello?
Yeah, I was just going to say, to comment on what Ian was saying, I can completely resonate with just everything that's been said. I've got a Cavernoma, left temporal lobe.
It impacts David, people differently, all various. I don't have a Cavernoma. I have that subarachnoid hemorrhages, but the key thing is, no matter how you acquire the brain injury, it's really, we all have challenges in some aspect. And in fairness, there's a lot of the things that we have been or maybe our most positive traits before our injuries have been magnified, or our most negative things have been magnified, or else maybe gone the other way. It impacts everyone differently. With regards to the stuff that we've covered, is anybody else got any other tips that they would like to share?
Well, I find if I'm going somewhere I'm not familiar with, and I'm walking along, it pays to look backwards so that when you're coming back again, you know what it looks like.
Very good idea. Yes, fair play. Fair play. Would you use Google Maps?
When I use Google Maps, I don't use. I like looking at Google Maps before I go, or look at Google Earth. I don't find Google Maps terribly good unless it's in a city.
Fair point. But interesting though, David, that and well done, you're looking before you go there. You're looking to see, what should I see, what's going to, what roughly landmarks am I looking out for. That's a very positive step, yeah, and it certainly works. Charlotte, I think you were going to jump there, were you?
I was going to ask a question. I find, and I don't know if others do, that if I'm, say, very tired or quite stressed, I'll find different cognitive symptoms or issues will get worse. So I think it was a couple of weeks ago, I had an exam in college, and it was an oral exam. And I was like stressed about it because I hadn't had an oral exam like that. And I remember answering one of the questions, and I started off on this little talk, and I got like 2 sentences in, and I was trying to think back in my head, being like, oh, what did she actually ask me? Because I wanted to like add that sentence to like wrap up my answer nicely, you know, put it in a bow and answer the question well. And I genuinely just had to stop and be like, I'm so sorry. I can't remember your question. I've no clue what you asked me.
That's fine. That's at least, look, it's better to do that than answer the wrong question or go off on a complete tangent. You know, it is better. I used to do multilingual recruitment, and when I'd be talking to people coming into me at interview, and I'd say to them, like, if I've said something that you don't understand, ask me to repeat or rephrase it so you're answering the right question to me. I would not see a problem with that. I definitely would not. The other thing too, Charlotte, is don't forget you're learning a new language, or you're getting a test there. You're learning that your traditional learning that you probably would have done in the classroom has probably been out the window for the last year anyway. So it is more difficult for you. I've also got to share the experience, whereas I'm learning a language as well, and I can read the stuff fine. Just don't ask me a question. In my head, I can sort of map the sentence together. Don't ask me what it means to anybody else.
I don't even have the excuse of learning another language. I was the one who was the native speaker. The 2 people examining me were Dutch speaking English, and it was an oral. They do it orally, sort of like an interview type exam for assessing like how you've done in the like practical like project we were set, just talking about it and talking about a report we'd written for it.
But you mentioned something there as well, fatigue. Fatigue was a big issue for you.
Yeah.
So then like a big issue people will find with any brain injury is if they're having fatigue issues, everything is so much harder. It's magnified. And if you can't get that sleep, or you're not getting enough of sleep, clear that cache. I don't know if you meditate, but try that. That might actually help. And sometimes I find if I'm particularly fatigued, there's a few different issues for me in terms of fatigue. Meditation to me can be as good as sleep.
Yeah, I am. Last bit from me, I promise.
Okay.
I will sometimes take naps in the middle of the day. Like I've even working on group projects. I've been like, hey, I need half an hour to take a really. At that point, it's not even a nap. It's just like a zoning out while listening to music. But I find that really helps, especially.
Good. Great. Okay, if it works for you, that's fine. Do it. Christina, you're on mute.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
I just wanted to say something that helped, because maybe it will help other people. You mentioned the fatigue and the meditation. I made sure to prioritize sleep for the first year after my bleed. And I made sure that everybody knew that I had limitations on what I could do in each day, and that I would get a certain amount of sleep, and I had to let a lot of things drop, and I let them drop. And when I wasn't sleeping, I started off doing things that were very mechanical, that didn't require thinking, like gardening, painting, drawing, things that were second nature. And over time, the combination of the sleep and doing mechanical things seemed to really improve my ability to do things that required other types of brain function. And I just got better and better and better and better.
I like your terminology there, mechanical things, sequencing. I know one of the challenges that I had after coming out of the hospital was sequencing. It was so hard. My family came to stay after I got out of the hospital, and when they left, I was kind of glad to see them go, to be fair, but they were very helpful when they were here. But I went to make the bed, change the bed after that, and I couldn't remember how to change a bed. I was serious. I was going, the pillowcase on, and then did I put the pillowcase on? Is that pillowcase off? You had to. It was just like it took me hours to make a bed, and then I just wanted to get into it when the time was finished. But like that, it did get easier, and your mechanical is probably a good way of looking at it. The natural sequencing. Good point. Well done. and being honest with people as well. How did that work for you, Christina? Did people think any less of you or any more of you, or did they cut you slack? Well, you weren't probably looking slack. You were making it clear to them, look, guys, hands up, this is what's happening.
To be honest, it was life-changing, because I realized I should have been doing that my whole life, even before having a brain injury. And I realized that you could just tell people, I can only be at this event for 2 hours, and then I'm going to get tired and need to sleep, otherwise I'm going to fall apart. And they wouldn't mind, and nobody cared. You just have to set your own limits and say, this is all I can do, and that's all I'm going to do, because I need to prioritize getting my brain better.
Yeah, and it's consistent as well, because then sometimes when you go to events and people can be rattling on for hours, and you go, that could have been wrapped up in half an hour. So your concentration scan, your their physical time might have been there 2 hours, but your brain activity time might have been half an hour. So it's really getting the most out, prioritizing what needs to be done. Great tips, well done. What was that noise? Anybody, anything else? What are future plans for people? What do they want to go and do now after their injury, or is there something standing in their way that they want to do and they're a bit reluctant to do because of it? Okay. Sandra, are there beeps coming through?
Yeah, it's fine. It's one person saying, have you seen the problems with the higher reasoning repair or resolve?
Oh, okay. Those are the it can depend on the person. It really can. Like sometimes, like when I send about the higher reasoning, it can really be your filter's gone and you say things you really shouldn't have, and you think, oh Jesus, I shouldn't say it, or people will actually know it's not you. Or you might be the impulsive. It's just a matter of taking time. You learn by your mistakes in terms of the impulse if you make the wrong decision. But I know sometimes that I can still be a little bit inflexible. Sandy, you probably know from working with different groups, but it's more to do with the judgment. And I have said some wicked things to people, and I go, I shouldn't have really said that. I often would have thought it, but you sort of bite your tongue. But then this time it's like, oh no, I did actually say that. Sometimes you just look at them and go, no, I didn't really say it. You misheard me, but they know you said it. It's just, unfortunately, it's a thing that does actually happen. Some people might like it, they've been that blunt, but it can take time, yeah. But it's more just to do with processing, giving yourself time. Anything else there, Sandra?
One, doctors have confirmed that I can drive again, but I have not done due to fear.
Okay. Well, okay. The important thing here is you're past medically fit, which is good. What are you afraid of? Did haven't said?
No, hasn't said.
All right. Okay. So that's fine. Only do it when you want to do it and you are ready to do so. I know over here we have, and if it's in the UK, you'll have to contact the DVLA, where you can go on like a driver's test, and that'll really just take you through and say that you are physically and medically fit to be driving again. They will take you on a driving test, and it would be, though if it's like the one I got, it was very long and very difficult because the guy took me into a different part of Dublin that I wasn't used to. I didn't really particularly know, in a strange car. It was challenging. He took me to rush hour as well. Just wanted to see how it got on. But then I knew I was fit to drive. If you want to get back into driving, and you haven't been, but the doctor has okayed it, what I suggest is maybe going into some of the retail estates, maybe some of the industrial estates that are a little bit quieter, particularly over a weekend, and maybe getting the feel of the road and getting the feel of a car there again. There's less traffic. You can practice pretty much anything you need to do in a pretty closed off area. If you know your navigation skills, your perception, for terms of space, reversing, etc. Those can work. Or else, if you're an early bird and you want to if you're maybe going to a different city or something like that. Google Maps and that, but years ago, when I was learning to drive through Belfast, I would have done really early in the morning to find out where I was going. Didn't need to go there maybe later on in the week, but it just built up my skill set at driving around that city.
And that's it. We're at 8 o'clock. So has anybody else got any more questions or comments? Or
guys, thanks for listening. I hope it went somewhere to what you were looking for. It's always kind of difficult to know what to pitch it at, but hopefully it was beneficial to you. Thanks for listening.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much for all the tips.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a long journey for me as well.
Thank you very much to Seamus and everybody for taking part.
All right. Thanks, guys. Sandra has the presentation, guys. If you want, if you just maybe send it out